I know Glenn was his first drum major, but Bill Paxton, and I were his first Delaney drum majors. So I'm not sure what that says about us, other than I'm 10 years younger than Glenn. First thing, I need to thank some people, and I'm not sure where Brian Drake is, but we definitely need to thank Brian Drake. He's the current band director here at Westminster, and his kids took care of setting all this up and getting all the equipment for us. So wherever you are, Brian. Also, all night I've been getting thank yous from people. Thanks for helping organize this. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for doing. Don't thank me. I want to thank all these people for letting me do this. And thank Jim for being the inspiration for us to do it. It was no work. It was fun. This is so cool. All these, I'm getting 40 emails a day. I want to play second clarinet. I can't play first clarinet because I don't remember how to play high, whatever. That was just wonderful. And to meet all these people tonight, like, oh, well, I've seen your picture on Facebook and you've sent me 12 emails, but now I know who you really are. That's just been really cool. But most importantly, I need to thank Dawn McKenna for making this happen. I mean, when Dawn said, this is the idea, and I said, well, I want to do that. And it's been wonderful, and I'm so glad that I was able to do it and be involved, so thank you. You were allowed one story? Okay, I've got 5. But they didn't take 46 pages. Might be the glasses. The first one, and these are all, you'll see where I'm going. It's the summer of 1989. Those folks who were at Wayne then know we had generously a rough year before Jim Paxton came. And we got together in the summer, all the student leaders for the marching band got together to meet Jim, Mr. Paxton at that time. And when we got together to meet him, I knew a little bit. I had some friends from Carroll County. I knew that he had taught at Westminster. I knew that he had retired from Westminster kind of for a year. So there was some trepidation. We were like, well, this guy quit being a band director? We want this guy? I don't know about this. So he came in, and I don't know if it was the first meeting or the second meeting, but he showed up in a Little Feat t-shirt. He had gone evidently to Merriweather Post Pavilion the night before to a Little Feat show and wanted to wear his t-shirt the next day. And I think all of us that were there at that meeting said, I think we can deal with this guy. Another story from that time, actually, I think I've got 6 ones, sorry. From that very first year, the band was lean. We had gone through a rough year. I don't remember how many were in that top level band, but I have a feeling it was somewhere in the 20s because a lot of people had dropped out. So I was in the back playing the tuba and the euphonium. We didn't have other people on either part, so Pete was still a freshman, so he wasn't allowed to be in the upper band yet. But I had the tuba, and I had the euphonium next to me, I played some stuff on the tuba, then there was an important passage. So I grabbed the euphonium, pulled it up, and I was pretty full of myself for this. I'm playing both instruments, nobody else is getting to do that. And Jim looked back one time, and he's smiling at me. Actually, back then, we started calling him Vinny. It had to be the mustache at that point. I'm not sure why else. But he looks back and he just starts smiling and sort of laughing. And I'm like, what's the deal? And he said, just something funny about you managing to play 2 instruments at once. Those few of you that are here that were there know it was a little ruder when he said it, but it probably was just what I needed because it embarrassed me so much that I just sort of hid back there and was like, okay, I'll just play my 2 instruments and be a good little band member. He knew what I needed then, because I was too full of myself. I was the big hotshot. I'm going to college to major in music. I'm going to be a band director like Mr. Paxton one day. I'll be better than Mr. Paxton one day. And he knew I needed to get a little bit of humility then. So my second story is I graduated. I go to Oregon Ridge for the 4th of July to see the BSO. It's really cool. And lo and behold, who's there in the crowd but Mr. Paxton. I'm like, hey, what are you doing here? He said, well, I'm working with this camp out at Western Maryland College, and, we come to the concert and enjoyed it, and it's sort of a thing for all the music kids out there. I said, oh, that's really cool. I said, well, next year, they're going to hire some camp counselors, so I'll put in a word for you. It's like, oh my gosh, that's great, Wonderful. So the next year comes along, and Linda Kirkpatrick, who was going to play with us tonight, but came down with strep, still wanted to play and didn't want her to be contagious with the band up here. But I get a call, and she says, well, Jim Paxton recommended you. All the other counselors have been students at this camp, so I'm not positive, but he said he could do it. So I got hired, and it's been 23 years, and I still work at the now McDaniel Band Camp every single summer. So something must have gone right. But I remember from that camp, there was a camp counselors kind of, 20% work, 80% having a good time with the other counselors. And we had stayed up all night one night, playing, I think, with categories and eating goldfish, and I'm sure we were only drinking lemonade. The next day during band rehearsal, the counselors were supposed to be in the band rehearsal. Jay Bocook was directing the band, and we were supposed to be in there playing to help out. Well, I had fallen asleep in the lounge on one of the sofas. If you know McDaniel, there's a little lounge outside the forum, and one of those sofas I had pretty much passed out on. So evidently Jim was sent out to fetch me. And he did it as only he could, and once again he knew exactly what I needed at that moment. He brought out the crash cymbals. And you hear those stories, and you think, yeah, that's funny, that's great. It's not. I remember the pain, and to this day, in my percussion ensemble class, I stay clear of those crash cymbals. But he definitely let me know, you know what? You're supposed to be working, boy. And I got back in there and worked. So then I go through a few years of college. I'm majoring in music education. They say you need 20 hours of practicum time. This is pre-student teaching. And I said, well, I'm going to Delaney. That would be great. So I finished school in May. Delaney has 3 or 4 more weeks. I call up. I say, Paxton, can I come out and work with the band and get my 20 hours? He said, that would be wonderful. Come on out. So I go out the first day, and I'm sure there are a few people here who were in that band, and I really apologize. And I look at the music, and I said, oh, I'd love to do some of these. These are really cool. He said, no, I have something for you. Okay. So he'd known me as a drum major and knew I read the scores very well, knew me as a player. I was a good reader. So he puts a score in front of me called Chroma by Frank Erickson. I hope none of you have ever had it played. Every note, it was modern 20th century 12-tone composition. Every note was different from every other note that came before it. And I, of course, thinking I knew all my stuff, went in that second day, and he said, go ahead, why don't you go out with the band? I didn't look at it the night before. I'd be fine in front of the band. Oh my gosh. And I think that day I probably sweat more in 40 minutes than I did in 4 years as a drum major, or 2 years as a tuba player, 2 years as a drum major, because, again, he knew what I needed. I need a little kick in the pants. You know what? You don't know everything yet, kid. You've got a ways to go. So I get out of college. I get hired at Hereford High School. No marching band when I got there. I convinced 20 kids to ride down with parent drivers to the marching band showcase at Paxton University. And we go out and watch, and everybody puts on their show, and the kids all applaud and enjoy the shows. And at the end of the show, there's a thing called mass band. Those of you who know me in later years know I dread mass band, like the plague. But at the time, mass band was still cool. And we watched mass band, and Delaney, at the end of mass band, everybody comes off the field, they're all heading their buses, and Delaney's still at attention, waiting at attention on the field for all the other bands to leave. And I remember doing that as a drum major when I was there. And on that bus ride home from that, or with the kid actually had some bands, getting back to Hereford, the kids all were asking about it. What was that? Why did they stay at attention? And I was so proud of it, and telling them the story and saying, well, that was Mr. Paxton. We were on performance on there until everybody was gone. That was all part of the show. The next year, we went from those 20 kids, the ragtag fleet, to 50 kids in the marching band. And we played at the showcase. And we did not stand out there at attention because that was the latest thing. I couldn't steal that one. But my kids definitely got like a second level of influence from Jim. And I know in 19 years in Baltimore County now, there are a lot of kids who have gotten the second level of influence from Jim Paxton. A few years after that, I moved to Franklin High School, and I get a phone call from Scott Fucci, who's here right now. Scott was the department chair at Delaney at the time. Called me and said, we've got an assistant band director position. We'd like you to come out. I want to sort of wean you into Delaney and have you be Jim's successor. And I really wasn't sure. And I kind of hemmed and hawed and said, let me think. And I apologize, Scott. I think I left you hanging for like a week. And I was waiting for Jim to call me. I was waiting for, or anything, some sign. And he didn't. And I at some point called Scott Becker, probably knowing me I just sent an email and said, Scott, I don't think I'm ready yet. I don't think I can do that at this point. So then I got to the fall meeting in August, and I saw Jim, and I went up and said, did you know that this was happening? And he said, oh, yeah. So why didn't you take it? And I said, well, I was kind of waiting for you to call and wait for, what you thought about it. And he said, well, have you done everything you want to do at Franklin yet? It's like, well, no, I certainly haven't. He's like, that's it. You're not done that yet. And I don't know if he sensed the tremor and the force that I wasn't done at Franklin yet, but he knew enough that he didn't try to call me and persuade me to come in. He just let things run their course, and I'm sorry, Scott, because I didn't come in, but I guess Caitlin did okay. I think the biggest thing that Jim influenced me, and now is influencing a whole other generation, is he always knew exactly what you needed. He knew whether to give you a handshake, whether to pat you on the back, whether to cut you down a peg, whether to just give you that look. And there are two that I remember vividly. One was sort of looking down and under the eyebrows, and then the other was the smirk. And he knew which one he needed. And what I want everyone to do right now is think of some memory of whether it's Mr. Paxton, or whether it's Vinny, or Pax, or Jim, and think of something he did for you, and it was just what you needed. And next time you're working with somebody else, think about what Jim Paxton did, and do for them what he did for all of us. Do just what they need.
It was a really wonderful experience to watch over the course of 4 years how he made that program his own, and how he took time to not make it his own right away from the very first second, but he actually let us have our own identity. And that's one thing that we hear coming back over and over tonight. He let us be who we wanted to be, and constantly molded us in the direction that he thought was helpful and that he believed would be good for us. In my case, many of you know, I did go on and become a professional musician. I don't know, people came to do stuff that worked out. And despite the fact that I was so into music, it's funny because in high school, he never pushed me in that realm at all. As a matter of fact, he did what he thought I needed most of all, and it really is what I needed. He let me be a high school kid. He let me be a jokester and prankster, and at the same time encouraged me and nominated me for things that I didn't know existed because he wanted to challenge me. He wanted me to see what was out there. But he knew what we all needed. You'll hear people talk about how, for example, with Brian, talking about how how he was able to sense that overzealousness and slip it back in place so that you would feel kind of, okay, I'm not quite ready for that. So in my case, I was a late bloomer. My freshman year, I believe it was my freshman year, at the banquet ceremony, I won the nicest all-around, that was my award, the nicest all-around guy. So I believe it was the following year that I won the loudest and most annoying. Late bloomer. And he managed to work with that, and in spite of all that craziness, despite how crazy we all were, and believe me, in high school students, we all know what we're capable of, whether it was a percussion line, shooting pennies out of slingshots into people in the band, that hurt. Whether it was a couple of us getting together for a forensic mouthpiece got stuck in this trumpet. One was pulled the bell, the other was pulled the mouthpiece, and accidentally ripped the trumpet in half. Remember that? Yeah. So despite whatever happened, he kind of took it all in stride. He let us be who we wanted to be. And for that, I always thank him. For me personally, one of the greatest things he did for me, I'm not so certain he should have, but we hear this Western Maryland camp that comes up. And Jay Volkook at the time was well, still is, one of the band directors for that. Incredible composer and arranger. And he had an arranging class that he taught there. And Mr. Paxton really wanted me to be in that course because he knew that I loved to write music, he knew that I loved to arrange, I loved to play piano. But he also knew that I knew nothing about theory. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. And so, as only Mr. Paxton could do, he thought, well, I'm going to prepare Brian for the theory test by giving it to him. And he actually gave me this test and said, I want you to learn this, and I want you to see what's on here, and I want you to memorize this stuff, and it's going to help you when you're going to take this class. And funny, when I got the test at Western Maryland, I got into that class, and I learned a lot. And I went on to college, and because of what that test had on it, I actually was able to pass my first semester of ear training because of that test and because of nothing else. And he just had a way of helping us. We all will remember our time with him. I met my wife in his band room. And I met a lot of my still, to this day, best friends in that band room. And Mr. Paxton wound up being Lisa's road rep. And so when she was a music teacher, he would come visit her every week, only for student business, of course. And they would never talk at all. And it was great because then Lisa would come home and tell me a story. And invariably, every week, we knew where you were and what you were doing. He was proud. And it's just wonderful that he had the chance to know that Lisa and I got married. He knew that so many of other friends that we met in that band got married. Our friend Becky and Brian, they got married. Our friend Beth and Ian got married. Marianne, they got married. Most of them are here right now. And our kids play together. Our kids play together a lot. And we go out together and we do things together. And that all was formed in that band. One thing I want to leave you with is we were going through a lot of our boxes and we were unpacking them. We pulled out the Harvard Dictionary of the Music. And we opened it up, and I had forgotten all about this, but on the inside cover it said James Paxton. And there's an inscription on the inside cover. And this really tells about who he was. On that inside cover it said, Lisa, I hope that you get as much use out of this in your career as I have in mine. Good luck in your career and everything that you do. Make me proud. We are making you proud. And we will continue to make you proud. Thank you.
As a ninth grader walking into high school, the provided what I consider a safe haven. When I think back on my high school years, my fondest memories were made either in that band room or doing something related to band. One of the things that sticks out to me the most is something I've heard reiterated time and time again is the fierce pride that you felt as a member of Paxton. He took such great pride in us and challenged us to be and do the very best we could, and by doing that ensured that we felt an immense pride both in ourselves and in our performances as a group, that we never wanted to let him down. He always knew how hard to push us, so as not to break us, but to make us the best that he knew we could be. Over his 30-plus years of teaching, Pax touched the lives of so many of his students. He was much more than a teacher to many of us, filling the role of friend, counselor, mentor, confidant, and was like a father to myself and many of his students. His office door was always open, and he was always there if you had a problem, needed some advice, or just needed someone to listen. Pax is the kind of teacher who doesn't come along every day. His ability to turn sometimes lazy, uninterested high school students into accomplished musicians is evident in the performances on the local groups he led. Pax had an uncanny ability to make every student feel as though they were important to him as an individual. One of the things that strikes me as incredible is the number of Pax's students who became musicians and teachers themselves. I think every teacher has the desire to have a positive effect on the lives of their students. In fact, Pax's influence reaches far beyond that of students. I'd like to recognize those students who went on to become professional musicians and teachers. Can somebody raise the lights? Who's doing that? Anybody that can raise the lights? Okay, I'm going to try to do this anyway. Would you please stand if you went on to become a professional musician? He never once raised his voice or punished someone who stepped out of line, but instead made sure that they learned something from their mistakes. Pax treated us all as adults, even if sometimes we didn't deserve to be. Gave us responsibilities and never let us take the easy way out. He somehow always knew how to practice. He was always there to listen to our problems, and although you always felt better after talking to him, Pax never solved our problems for us, but instead would point us in the right direction so that we could solve the problem on our own. The opportunities that Pax offered his students through the band program were exceptional. Trips to Atlanta and Williamsburg to compete in festivals against bands from all over the country developed a group pride that I remember today as clearly as the day we were there, and we normally swept every trophy in the house. At showcases and parades, we may not have been the largest or the loudest bands, but the discipline we had was second to none. While other bands stood around joking and laughing, we remained perfectly still and at the ready, and when we were called to attention, you better believe we turned our heads. A trip to Europe in 1997 with American Music Fraud to perform in 5 countries over 2.5 weeks was certainly the trip of a lifetime. Performing for people whom we could not communicate with because of a language barrier taught me that music truly is a universal language. Those memories are still clear to me today and are some of the best I have from my high school years. In 1997, when Pax and Dawn were married, we all saw such a profound change in Pax. He dressed better, was generally happier, and didn't stick around the band room after school like he had always done. During marching band season, we all remember fondly being on the football field practicing a field show, standing at attention, when a little 4-year-old girl came running across the field, yelling, "Paxton, you get over here." Pax was so lucky to have Dawn and McKenna in his life, and was so proud of both of you. In 2004, Pax asked me to speak at his retirement concert on behalf of all the alumni. What an honor that was. I had often wondered how I would thank a person who had had such a profound influence on me. I remember walking into the band room some 5 years after I had graduated, seeing the Welcome to Paxtonia sign in his office, the heater in the back of the room that I had sat on so many cold mornings, the trophies in every corner of the room, and the memories came flooding back to me. I could even see him standing in the hallway as we headed toward the band room for class, with his funny smirk and slight nod of his head. I still wonder sometimes what he was thinking. I couldn't believe that he was retiring, and I couldn't imagine a band room without him. To say I was nervous was an understatement, but I made it through his speech with a few laughs from the audience and a few smirks from Pax behind. I was thrilled to know that I had finally been able to tell Pax what he had meant to me and the impact he had had on my life. That is, until a few weeks later when I spoke to him, and he mentioned that from where he was standing, he couldn't hear a word I said. I told him he was either joking, or at least went back and watched the video. When I spoke to Dawn that Sunday before President's Day and learned Pax was ill, I was devastated. While I may not have seen him as much over the last few years as I would have liked, he was such an important person to me. And for me, there was no choice but to go see him. As I made the 2.5-hour drive to Westminster on Monday, I spent the entire drive reflecting on the memories I had and talking to old friends I hadn't heard from or spoken to in 10, sometimes 14 years. As sad as I was, I started to realize that Pax's impact was incredibly far-reaching. He had always made me feel like I was a special student to him. But how had he been able to do that with hundreds of students over some 30 years of teaching? I was able to spend several hours at the Dove House and was able to tell Pax what he meant to me. We cried, laughed, reminisced, and I shared with him some of the many pictures and stories that were being posted on the Facebook page that have been created. I don't believe that when I walked in there that day, that he truly knew the extent of the love that his students have for him, or the legacy that he was leaving behind. Before that night was over, memories had been shared, many students had come to tell him thank you, and a small group of students had come to play pieces outside of the window. I think he was honestly overwhelmed at the outpouring of love that was shown to him in his final days. As I sat and talked to him, he shared with me a story that I want to share with you. A few months ago, he said he had been driving to Baltimore for work and passed a funeral procession. He told me that he thought to himself, "I hope that when I pass away, that my funeral procession has more than 3 cars in it, because that would be really embarrassing." After I got over the shock of the statement, I assured him that the celebration of his life would be tremendous and would require a very large venue with hundreds, potentially a couple thousand of his family, friends, and students who would honor him. He smiled. Over these past few weeks, I have reminisced more about my high school days than I have in probably the 14 years since I have graduated. To say that Pax was one in a million teacher would be an understatement, and all of us are better people for having had him in our life. His legacy will live on in the hundreds of students he taught, and in our children, and the people we come in contact with. Matt Calvaresky put it best when he said, "It is said that the strength of a man lies in the number of people that he is able to influence over the course of a lifetime. That is the mark of a true leader." So thank you, Pax, for bringing together so many people through your love of music. We are all lucky to have known you, and you are truly missed. Join me back on stage and somebody would please put the lights up, that would be great. I had the privilege of meeting Glenn, who was Paxton's first drum major at Westminster High School on that Monday night at Bell House. I have had several truly enjoyable conversations with Glenn over the past few weeks, and I'm happy I've gotten to know him. As Glenn's making his way up here, we thought it would be a fitting tribute to find a way to conjoin the two high school bands into one. So Glenn and I would like to ask everyone to participate in something that Jim taught both of us, leadership.
We get the house lights up.
There you go.
What Laura and I want you all to do is to listen carefully. Okay, Mike and Robert, great job here. Way up, great. Trust me. We have something we want to do together from Westminster High School and Delaney. And this is what we want to do. We want everybody to be together, and that's what Jim wants. And in doing that, we're going to ask various categories of students, friends, and so forth to stand. When you stand and you are completely up, everybody else is up, we are going to go to attention. You want to tell them what we're going to do?
What we would like to do is, once everybody is called to attention, we're going to do an honor pass with eyes and cry. We're going to do it 3 times. The very first time we do it, we're going to say eyes, and we'd like you to respond in a regular voice with pride. The second time we do it, we'd like you to respond with pride in an outside voice. The third time, we'd like you to respond with pride at the top of your lungs, loud enough so the class can hear it together. So please stand when you fall into one of the following categories. Family.
The students of Sandy Mount Elementary. The students of West Middle School. Westminster High School. Delaney High School.
Now, all the teachers and or administrators from those schools, please stand.
Now, all the band boosters, please stand and be recognized. The presidents and vice presidents and treasurers, all the people that put together the money to help us get out there and play music.
Assistants, directors, coaches, rifle squad, flag squad, color guard, band front, anybody that fits that category.
Now listen closely. Now everyone that ever sat for 8 to 10 hours in the stands or on the side of the road to cheer on a band for 10 to 15 minutes as they walk by, or for 10 to 15 minutes on a field competition, or 45 seconds when the band walk by during a parade. Please stand.
Bus and truck drivers, for anybody that assists the band in any way.
Bruce, announcers, I hear those kind of people. Now, everyone else that came to celebrate the life of James Paxton, please stand.